Hi, everybody. This is Professor Barry Brennan. I'm going to be talking about persuasive speaking today. And I'm going to go right into that to my PowerPoint about persuasive speaking. This is for my public speaking students. And I'm going to kind of give you an overview. We're probably going to break this up in a couple of different parts. I'm actually going to set my Siri for my alarm right now so I don't go over. Siri, set an alarm for 13 minutes.
Okay, I set an alarm for 2:05 p.m.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're going to get started. I'm going to share the screen and we'll get started. Okay, here we are. Persuasive speaking. Start right here from the beginning. So far we've talked about informative speaking, types of informative speaking, and we've talked about persuasion a little bit, but not much in depth. And hopefully I'm going to be able to kind of get you an idea of, so you can understand the big difference between persuasive speaking and informative speaking. So when we're talking about persuasive speaking, you'll notice that I have a whole bunch of, they're all actually politicians, basically, politicians and some people that work for, actually all of them. These people were newly elected in 2018, I think, 2018, Georgia, and I can't remember what state he was in, other than the fact that he was like the first gay elected, I think he's a governor. And this is Kamala Harris. There's Cory Booker right there. You know, Bernie Sanders. This woman is the first Native American woman to be either, she's a senator or a rep in New Mexico. And there's our former President Barack Obama. Now, I've also included all of these people because I think that they're good speakers. Certainly it represents a certain political spectrum, but this is a political spectrum that I kind of follow anyway. But I think that they all have good speaking abilities. So let's move on. So when we talk about persuasive speaking, we're talking about our goal, or what we're talking about is that our goal is to change, alter, or influence the behavior of your audience. Okay. You either want to get them to change their attitude, you want to get them to change their values, you want to get them to change their belief, or you want to get them to change their behaviors or to take an action. Okay, what do you think about it? This is different than informative speaking, because informative speaking is related to just sharing information, right? Sharing it hopefully in an interesting, entertaining way, but you're not trying to get your audience to do anything other than, you know, hopefully listen to what you have to say, sharing that information. With persuasive speaking, you are trying to get them to do something different. So you're moving what we call from the status quo. The status quo means what's happening right now. You want to move them out of the status quo into a new kind of position or a new way of being. Okay, I want you to think about this for a minute and realize that this is a hard thing to do. Most people don't like change, and status quo usually means we're comfortable where we're at. And so to get them to do something different is going to take some doing. So just keep that in mind as you move into working on your persuasive speech. How are you going to do that? Okay, thinking about your audience, thinking about what you want to ask them to do. The best kind of persuasive speech is one that is realistic, has realistic expectations of the audience. Like, you're not going to try to convince audience members. Let's say you're going to give a speech on why we should buy automobiles that are electric or hybrid, okay? And maybe Tesla is one of your examples. In most cases, most students can't afford a Tesla. That's just realistic. But they can maybe afford something less. Even the Toyota hybrids are expensive as well, and I can't think of the name of it right now. I have one right outside my house. Why I can't remember the name of it is hilarious. But you know what I'm talking about. So you need to think about what's realistic. What can they change? If you want to get people to choose different cars, maybe you also want to get them to use public transportation. They can do that. Everybody can do that unless you live out in the country, right? So think about who is your audience? Who are you talking to? What can they participate? How can they participate in this change? Okay, if you want them to change behaviors or to do something different, can they do it? Are you asking something realistic? You need to think about your audience in terms of, are you trying to weaken or strengthen their position? Okay, let's say they have a position that, let me think about this. Let's say you really want to get people to change how they live their daily life around the environment and around using energy. Okay, one of the things that I hear often in student speeches is you want them to, a way to bring the CO2, right? That's parts per million, that part is like so high and that's part of the problem. Probably, I wonder if they were to test it right now during this pandemic, if it's gone down a lot. But the point is, if you wanted to bring the CO2 down, you might, one of the things that students say is we should unplug our things, our appliances and our electronics and things like that in our house. That contributes to the overall CO2 in the air, which contributes to global warming. And that's one thing that all of us can do. Here's the thing about that though. Depending on how big your house is, are you really going to do that? Is that a realistic thing you can ask people to do? Do people automatically plug and unplug all their lights and their lamps and all of that thing? Is that a realistic thing that we can do? So are you trying to weaken or strengthen where they're coming from? Are you trying to weaken their resistance to change, or are you trying to strengthen already their position? So if you were going to, everyone wants to help the environment. Most people are concerned, will we have a planet to live on in 50 years, okay? So how will you go about making people feel that they can contribute by making a change, but not something that feels like it's too much, right? So you, like, for example, I like to use a recycling as an example. You all are used to what I was called the green can or the blue can, some of you think, what are you talking about? But you're all used to this having recycling. You have been trained. Well, that's happened since, and probably in the last 20 years. That didn't happen before. That took a while for people to get retrained. And so even some people still, in California is different than a lot of other states. In other states, they don't do it the same way that we do it here in California. So something to think about. Are you weakening or strengthening the point of view of the audience? So what's going to be the burden on you? And you have to be careful if your audience is already on your side, then you don't want to, harp on something so much that you actually end up turning them off. Okay, let's talk about Aristotle's appeals, Aristotle's rhetorical appeals. And you all should know these pretty well because I've had you apply them to your speech analysis videos that I've had you watch. Logos, ethos, or ethos, pathos, and logos. The three things that Aristotle said, all good persuasive speeches incorporate these three elements. Okay, ethos. How does a speaker establish their ethos? Ethos has to do with how do we establish our credibility? We establish our credibility by saying, what is our connect to the topic? What's our background with the topic? How much experience have we had doing that? Do we also, let's say part of your speech is you want to get people to change their behavior on how they contribute to environmental pollution. So if you're asking people to walk to school instead of drive to school or take their bike to school, it'll make a difference if that's something you do, right? If that's something, maybe you've even started a club, or maybe you've even looked into people getting, people love to get money back for something that when they're doing something good, right? So you establish your ethos and your credibility by saying, you know, I'm not asking you to do something I'm not willing to do. I do this, I've been doing it for the last semester, and it's really made a difference in my life. Not to mention the fact that I'm so in shape because I ride my bike to school every day. Okay, that's an example of what I mean by ethos. How are you going to establish your credibility with the audience, and that makes them trust you? Pathos. Pathos is, you know, and notice it's a triangle, which all sides are equal in this kind of a triangle. So all three pieces are important. So pathos is about how are we going to appeal to the emotions of the audience, right? That's not only in the language that you use. Are you using concrete words? Are you appealing to our senses? Are you making us feel something? Whether it's nostalgia or whether feeling compassion, or whether you're making us feel angry about a situation, whatever, that's in the words that you choose and how you say it. So the emphasis you put on those words. Think about the speeches I've had you watch. That very first one I had you watch about the young girl who gave the speech to the 1992 United Nations on the environment. And she used repetition. She emphasized certain words. She was passionate, right? She was behind what she said. So pathos is important. It's not just appealing to the emotions of the audience, but it's how are you using your emotions to appeal to the audience? It goes back to ethos. We will trust you if you're passionate. If you're not passionate and you don't sound like you care about your topic, then why should we care? Okay, you need to be invested. So let's look at logos. Absolutely important in much of this lecture is going to end up being, it's going to feel like it's very logos oriented. Logos is your evidence. Are you clear? Did you organize? Does it make sense? Are you following a certain order of things? Have you made an argument that makes sense? Have you provided the evidence? Are you substantiating things? Right? That's a logos. Are you giving us proof, right? And reasons. If you're not doing that, then you haven't proved anything. And part of your job in persuasive speech is to prove that a change needs to happen. Let's go back to what I said before. A status quo is that place that all of us are right now. You can think of it. If you're in a comfortable place, that's a status quo. Why do we want to change? It's like people trying to get people to exercise. If they're happy just sitting around and not doing anything, and they're happy doing that, then it is really hard. That's my alarm. It's really hard to get people to change. So you need to work, your logos is really, really important. Okay, we're going to stop there, and I'm going to pick up. I'm going to pick up where we left off at the end of Aristotle's Appeals in my next piece.